Stephen T. Marshall, the Jigsaw Killer. In the Saw franchise, many tragic events happened in the life of John Kramer, resulting in him becoming the Jigsaw Killer. But where did the story's inspiration come from? Let me introduce you to Stephen T. Marshall, the real-life murderer named the Jigsaw Killer, and his lover, Sarah Bush. Stephen Marshall was described by friends as a lovable bad guy who lived a playboy lifestyle, spending thousands on sex workers and consuming large amounts of drugs. He was a popular guy that helped people out, according to one friend. He was a tall and hefty 38-year-old man from Borehamwood, Hertfordshire, who held jobs such as owning a gym, being a bouncer, running a car valet company, and kitchen sales. He was a bodybuilder and personal trainer, said to have connections to a criminal underworld. It was during his job in the kitchen sales that Stephen Marshall would meet his victim, Jeffrey Howe. Mr. Howe was a 49-year-old kitchen salesman who had worked around the country and was even a chef in Italy at one point in his life. He was described by his brother as being a jovial, charming character who had a heart of gold. When Stephen needed a place to stay in 2008, Jeffrey would say that Stephen could stay at his place. After a while, Mr. Howe became unhappy about the arrangement and asked Stephen to leave. Stephen refused and even had his girlfriend, Sarah Bush, staying there as well. Sarah was a 21-year-old sex worker, and that is how she met Stephen Marshall. Neither was paying any rent to Mr. Howe and were eating up all of his groceries. Stephen decided he wanted to get rid of Mr. Howe, so in the late hours of March 8, 2009, he murdered Jeffrey. He stabbed him twice in the back with a 4-inch knife, puncturing his lung. He then proceeded to dismember him in his own home. Stephen had decided he wanted to hide what happened so that he could, quote, make use of his property and money. That is exactly what he did. As soon as his friend Jeffrey was dead, Stephen began helping himself to the victims' bank accounts. He spent some of the money to buy a laptop, shoes, groceries, and cocaine. He then sold some of the victims' belongings, such as his mobile phone, some furniture, and his Saab car on eBay. In January of 2009, a friend of Mr. Howe's had visited his home to find a couple living there. She tried to call Mr. Howe and later heard he was missing. So on March 15th, she reported him missing. March 28th, Howe's brother John showed up to Jeffrey's place because no one had heard from Mr. Howe. John was told by Sarah that Jeffrey had not been by to collect rent in a while, and when he had left, he took his belongings with him. Howe's mother, who would hear from him on a regular basis, multiple times a week, would call to report him missing sometime before April 21st, when she could not reach her son. At 11:30 on the morning of March 16th, police would go to Howe's residence and enter with force when there was no answer and search all the rooms. They said there was no visible signs of blood, but Howe's passport was laying out on the coffee table. When Sarah and Stephen were questioned, they both stated he was alive, to their knowledge. On March 22nd, there was a left leg with a foot attached found in Cottard, Hertfordshire. It was wrapped in blue plastic bags. This is when a murder investigation began. On March 29th, a left forearm that had been dismembered at the elbow and the wrist was found in Withampstead. On March 31st, a farmer in a cattle pen unearthed a head that had been removed from the neck. The flesh had been removed along with the eyes, ears, and tongue. This was found in Leicestershire. On April 7th, a right leg was found in a holdall by a driver near the A10 in Hertfordshire. Then on April 11th, a torso, right arm, and upper left arm were all found by a walker near Standon, Hertfordshire. They were found inside a green suitcase located in a ditch. The suitcase was the same brand as the holdall. Police used dental records to identify Jeffrey Howe's remains. On April 21st, after learning Stephen had lived near where the torso was found, police arrested the couple. The arresting officers stated that at the time of the arrest, Stephen Marshall seemed very nervous, jittery, and that his leg was shaking. They said Sarah Bush seemed uncomfortable. After being taken to the station for questioning, Sarah would say Stephen had what she described as mood swings and that she had been planning on leaving him. Stephen only gave a no-comment statement during questioning. On April 23rd, Jeffrey Howe was publicly named as the victim the media had named the Jigsaw Man. Upon a closer search of the property, police would find blood in the bedroom, bathroom, under the carpet, and in Mr. Howe's car once it was recovered. They also found some green fibers from a shirt in Stephen's bedroom that matched fibers on duct tape that had been used to wrap the body parts. Due to CCTV and automatic plate readers, police were able to trace their movements. On January 12, 2010, the trial would begin. Stephen Marshall would originally deny committing the murder and claim Sarah actually murdered Mr. Howe. He stated he had only helped her to dismember and dispose of him. Sarah Bush would deny his claims. At this point, the court would start to hear all about who Stephen was and what his past included. They were told how Stephen had previously threatened to get rid of Sarah's ex in Epping Forest and to dispose of another woman. They heard how he had boasted in the part about having considerable experience of disposing of bodies. A witness stated that while Stephen had worked for the Adams crime family, he had used a meat cleaver, meat knives, a hacksaw, and even a chainsaw to cut up bodies. A friend of Sarah's, Sophia Franklin, would testify that while intoxicated, Sarah said she helped Stephen kill Mr. Howe. Another one of her friends, Danielle Matthews, stated Sarah told her she had seen the murder. On January 29th, Stephen Marshall decided to change his plea of guilty of murder. He was sentenced to life in prison on February 1st, with a minimum of 36 years. The judge, Jeremy Cook, ruled that due to overwhelming evidence, very little credit would be given, and he is not eligible for parole until 2046. Also, on February 1st, Sarah changed her plea to guilty. She was sentenced to 3 years and 9 months for the charge of perverting the course of justice by helping Stephen Marshall take the head of Mr. Howe to Leicestershire. She was also given a concurrent sentence of 2 years and 3 months for giving false information in regards to Howe's location. She was acquitted of the murder. Sarah Bush served 45 months in prison. After the trial, it was found out that Stephen Marshall had previously been convicted of criminal damages, assault, battery, possession of cocaine, and possessing firearms. He had attacked his ex-wife in 2003, and he was arrested in 1996 for suspicion of murdering Manish Nekrecha. Stephen Marshall was denied leave to appeal in October 2010. He then tried to challenge the length of his sentence, but that was denied as well in November of 2010. Jeffrey Howe's hands have never been found, but Sarah Bush has stated they are buried in Epping Forest. Through his lawyer, Peter Doyle, Stephen Marshall admitted in court on February 1st to dismembering 4 other bodies between 1995 and 1998. He stated he disposed of them in Epping Forest when he worked for the Adams crime family as a doorman at a nightclub in London. This admission came as a surprise, and when questioned further about these crimes, Stephen Marshall refused to give any further information about the victims. Now you are probably asking how this inspired the Saw movie franchise, and the answer is it didn't, other than the name. However, there are a few real-life things that did, so let's discuss those now. Saw's Jigsaw Killer was inspired by a real-life event. The idea of John Kramer's character first came about when Lee Winnell, the writer of the first 3 films in the series, was 24 years old and began having severe migraines. Winnell, fearing that something serious like a brain tumor was wrong, he decided to go to the hospital. They ran a series of tests on him, including an MRI, and thus a villain was created. He thought up a psychopath that had been told he was going to die of a terminal illness. He was quoted as saying, "Instead of a doctor telling you, you have a year to live, make the best of it," this guy would put people in a situation and say, "You have 10 minutes to live. How are you going to spend those 10 minutes? Are you going to get out?" Then there is the character by the name of Zepp. In the films, he carries out the kidnapping part. Well, he was inspired by a true story that James Wan had read when he was young. There was a man who used to break into homes at night. He wasn't breaking in to steal or even to hurt people, though. He was breaking in to tickle their feet. Yes, their feet. Oddly enough, upon researching this, there have been a few serial ticklers. In the case we are talking about, though, the man was eventually caught. During his interrogation, he told officers that he was being forced by someone else to do it. He had received a letter in the mail along with a jigsaw puzzle piece. The letter instructed him to commit the acts. So then there was the movie in the series titled Spiral. In this film, there is a character by the name of Zeke. This version of events is what we see happening in the world around us. It is based on the crimes of police brutality. Director Darren Lynn Bousman was quoted by MSN about the subject as saying, quote, "I mean, sadly, the reality of this has been an issue long before George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. This has been going on for years and years and years. We always want to say something with the Saw movies. Even though they're buried with violence and guts and gore, there's always messages to them. And that starts with James Wan's original and went through mine. We always want to say something more. I think that's why the Saw films have persevered while so many other franchises have not." End quote.